My name is Sheena Allen. As she mentioned, I am the CEO and founder of Capway. Capway is a financial technology company that I actually founded in 2016. So I am actually new to the Atlanta area. I've been here a few months. I moved my company here from Silicon Valley. So it's an adjustment. But I like it here. I do. So I'm not from the Bay Area. I am actually from Terry, Mississippi. So I'm from a little small town in central Mississippi. Born and raised, I grew up in a town, well, I grew up in a banking desert. So does everybody here know what a banking desert is? So I grew up in a town where there is only one bank. And the people in my family, my friends, my community, they had to rely on alternative financial services. And actually, my great-grandmother used to keep her money in her home. She didn't keep her money in the bank. So the stories you hear about people keeping money like their mattress, like in their recliners, that was my great-grandmother. So I went off to college, and I double majored in film and psychology, and I minored in marketing. Pretty much, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be an artist, so I love to draw and paint, and my dad told me I was going to be a bartender because art does not sell. My dad was old, traditional, Southern, and my senior year of college, I had this idea for a mobile app, and what I didn't know at the time was that app would turn into 5 apps, and I would actually build a tech company that would take me from Mississippi to Silicon Valley. So I stayed there for a while, moved to Austin, and I went back home to visit 2016. And what I noticed was people in my community that were my age at the time, I was around 27. The people that were my age was doing the exact same thing that I saw our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents do, which means they were cashing their checks at the convenience store, at the grocery store. They were not using banks. And what I knew that was different from when I was growing up was that we were moving to a cashless economy. So when I say that, I don't know if we realize how much stuff we cannot pay cash for anymore. So you can't take cash to Netflix. You can't take cash to Spotify. You can't pay your Uber driver cash. So we were moving to a completely cashless economy. And there was going to be an entire market that was going to be left out of being able to participate in the economy, in today's economy. So most mobile banks that you think of, they're really great with providing an app, and you can sign up and you get a debit card. But I wanted to make sure with Capway, it was something totally different. I wanted to actually build an entire financial ecosystem. So there's one thing to provide a debit card. There's an entire different thing to provide an entire financial ecosystem. And so part of our ecosystem, or at the core of what we do, is provide a debit card. The other part of what we do, one part of what we do is actually provide financial education, financial literacy. Now, you have financial literacy companies, but here's the issue. If I educate you on money, but I don't give you the tools to put the education to use, what was the purpose? And it's the same way if you reverse it. If I give you money and I don't educate you or guide you on how to use the money, what's going to happen? More than likely, you're not going to do right by the money. And so I wanted to make sure we built a system where both sides were able to work together. And that's just actually only a part of our ecosystem. It gets all the way into micro lending, which is keeping the next generation out of the predatory economy. So they don't have to go to payday lending, they don't have to go to check and cashing. They can actually come to Capway and get a microloan instead. And so what has happened with this company, which is a great thing, when I started this company, I didn't want to really go the B2C route. I mean, I wanted to touch consumers because, of course, the end user is who is most important. But I wanted to find a way to touch the masses in a different way than the traditional mobile banking apps were doing. And the way that we did that was we decided to go a B2B2C route. And so we focus on 7 different verticals, and we're able to onboard 1,000, 500, 500,000 people at one time. So we might go to a school. I'll give you an example. We'll go to a school, or a school will come to us and say, hey, we're in the inner city. There are no banks here, or if there are banks, of course, they're charging extremely high fees. And I have these 1,800 students who need to understand what it's like to work, and who maybe are working, but I need them to understand how money works and have an actual account. Now, usually if you think in these areas, usually they probably have a credit union or a community bank, but as most of us know, community banks and credit unions don't have that same technology advancements of some of your bigger banks. And so that school might say, hey, look, we just want to onboard 1,800 students. Not only do we want to teach them financial literacy, we want to make sure they have a debit card, and a debit card that understands their needs and who they are. So we went a B2B2C route. Since starting, the most interesting thing that I've been able to realize in doing this market is that there's a lot of people who live in bubbles in America and who don't really understand the numbers around this market. So just to throw some out, in 2015, when the Federal Reserve did their updated stats, it showed that 55 million Americans are unbanked or underbanked. That's 22% of the American population. And 78% of Americans actually live paycheck to paycheck. And of that 78%, 1 in 10 people who make over $100,000 are actually living paycheck to paycheck. So I actually did a TED Talk in San Francisco last week, and my talk was the reality of being financially underserved in America. So you can only imagine how that turned out when you talk to people in Silicon Valley about being financially underserved in America. I'm doing my talk, and I noticed like half of the crowd is like Googling, because I'm sure they don't believe half of the numbers that I am actually explaining to them. Talking about the stats, talking about the myths that are around this community, where you hear somebody say, oh, well, people that are financially underserved should just work harder, or they should get a better job. And it's like we don't take into account being, we look at numbers of unemployment, but a lot of us don't take into account underemployment. Or I hear the people say a lot of times, oh, well, they should just learn to budget better. Well, the reality is that there's a budget that mainstream America does, or the financial system says, and then there's people who are actually just surviving. And when I say surviving, I know people that can take $20 and make it last a whole week, because that's all they have until they get paid again. And so for me, it was bringing light to an issue that as a company, we could do great by people, but we could also scale as a company. And what I found, was our sweet spot as a company, was that when you look at corporations, whether they're retailers, service providers, community organizations, a lot of these companies are not growing anymore. Like maybe they have 60 million users or 70 million users. I'm talking like Fortune 500 companies. And when they come to us, what they'll say is, we realize that in order for us to grow as a company, we're gonna have to learn to understand and touch people who are financially underserved. But to be honest, we have no clue how to do it. And so the sweet spot that we found as a company is, we make a win for our partners, we make a win for ourselves, but the most important thing is we make a win for people who have been overlooked by the financial system really forever. And so it's been a journey. Running a bank is not easy at all. The last person talked about regulatory. Regulatory compliance is not easy. And people who really don't think there's opportunity or money in this space, because once again, it's a population who's completely overlooked for the most part, has been actually an amazing blessing. So as she mentioned earlier, we have some amazing investors behind us. Backstage Capital is an investor of ours. Initialize, which is run by Gary Tan and Alexis Ohanan, which most people know is Serena Williams' husband. I don't think he even goes by Alexis anymore. And we've had some amazing people who have been able to help us build an amazing company. So we look forward to completely disrupting the financial space, and we look forward to allowing people to now be able to participate in an economy, and all on fair grounds. So thank you.
Time for a couple questions?
Yes, I'll take some questions if anybody has a question.
No one wants to know how to get money from Serena Williams' husband?
Hi, Sheena. Thank you for sharing. It's always a pleasure to hear your story. For those of us in the audience who might be familiar with you or those who are just getting to know you, can you tell us a little bit more about what's next for you all?
Yes, so we just raised a round of funding. That round allowed us to really build the banking piece of what we're doing, which is the most drawn out part that takes a very long time. And what we're adding from there is the micro lending piece. And so like I said, that our bank does, the way our banking is set up, we don't do overdraft fees, there's no minimum balance fees, but by adding that micro lending piece, if say you go and swipe your card and you about to go into, well, you would have gone to overdraft, at that point of sale, we put the power back into the consumer's hand. So we actually will allow them to take out a small micro loan at that point of sale when their card declines so that they can make the purchase if it's needed. But the important piece about us doing that is if I swipe my card and you throw me into overdraft, I feel like the power was taken away from me. Like you just made me pay $37. Especially sometimes when you have pending transactions, you think you have more in your account than you do. But we want to make sure that we're putting the human back into banking. So we're putting the power back into the consumer's hands, especially with the micro lending piece.
Yes.
Hello, it's Rihanna again. So after each success story, there is a challenge, there is a journey. Can you share like all the difficulties you encounter while building Capway and how did you overcome them?
Oh, what part should I
Maybe
start
not all.
on this
How about
list?
one?
One that I'll share is, so when you are a fintech company, every fintech company sits on what's called a banking provider. So I don't care if you're PayPal, Cash App, if you are a fintech service, you sit on what's called a banking provider, which kind of plays the middleman or the processor in between. When we started this company, it was about the roadmap of growing at a rate where it was smart for us to grow, like not grow too fast, but of course we wanted customers. We started with a banking provider who we knew was good for starting out, and they would get us to about around 25,000 users, get us some good data, and we ended up growing way faster than we expected. And so it actually put us in a, which sounds like a good problem, but as a company, when you're growing, it put us in a really bad predicament. So it was like, now we had to figure out a way to switch banking providers, which takes time, because you got to go through new card art, compliance review. So it was, like I said, growing fast is a good issue, but because you're doing fintech, it's really been just a huge headache. But it's team building, finding people who understand the market, timing. Fintech takes a long time. I mean, you'll see some fintech companies where they'll start this year and they won't actually launch like 5 years later. And it's a reason for that. Like fintech takes a really long time. So being patient, growing in a smart and strategic way, and just a lot of road bumps and blocks on the way.
Last question. Who else? Back here?
You said a lot of people live in a bubble. What information are people the most surprised to find out?
The one that I get often is there are people who really in a bubble who do not believe that in 2019 that there are Americans who do not have bank accounts. A lot of people even to investors, just regular people, I'm speaking like unbanked, and I've actually been asked, did you make that word up? I'm like, no, I didn't. And it's like, so what does that mean? I said, it's the 25 million people who don't have bank accounts. In 2019, I'm like, yes, in 2019. So probably the biggest one is people who just don't believe that people don't have bank accounts. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena.